What if a country's map came with some cheat codes? Mountains like fortresses, rich with water and natural resources, straits that choke off enemies like a boss level. That's Turkey, the final boss of geography, and for 2,000 years, this map has been deleting empires. And if you enjoyed these weekly videos, hit that subscribe button, mainly so I can pretend this counts as touching grass, so to speak. Take a look here. This is the Anatolian Plateau in central Turkey. It's the heart of the country, stretching from the coastal plains near the Aegean to the east where the Pontic and Taurus mountain ranges meet. The capital, Ankara, is in the northwest part of this plateau. Look at a population map of Turkey and you'll see a dense concentration in the regions surrounding the capital. This makes up 19% of Turkey's total surface area at 58,300 square miles, 151,000 square kilometers. At first, it doesn't look like a place that would be the seat of an empire. The Anatolian Plateau can be tough. It gets almost no rain in the summer, which means the average annual rainfall in central Anatolia is only about 16 inches 40 centimeters, but even this can vary widely. And yet, the central Anatolian region is the largest agricultural area in the country, and that's because it's not completely dry. It gets cold and snowy in the winter, with average temperatures between 26.6 and 32 degrees Fahrenheit, -3 to 0 degrees Celsius. That's where the geographical blessing comes. Snow always melts. The water seeps into the soil. So, in spring, central Anatolia is wet. In fact, Anatolia was one of the first parts of the world outside the Fertile Crescent to adopt agriculture, starting around the mid-9th millennium BCE. This wasn't just due to its closeness to early farming centers. Fertile soil, diverse climates, and abundant water all played a role. Today, the Turkish government still makes the most of what nature gave it. A third of Turkey's total wheat comes from central Anatolia. It's also an important place for growing barley, but those yields vary a lot with the lack of rainfall in the middle of the year. But there's a way to make up for the shortcoming, and as you'll see, Turkey has a lot of backups in place. The region's fields produce staples like chickpeas, beans, potatoes, lentils, and corn. Its open pastures also support grazing, though without careful management, overgrazing can quickly strip the soil and damage the land. Turkey's agricultural output doesn't end in the plateau, though. Look at that population map again, and you'll see the most densely packed part of the country is in the west, near the sea. These strips of land are also heavily cultivated. Beyond the plateau's staple crops, Turkey is the world's largest producer of hazelnuts, raisins, apricots, and even oregano, just in case the world ever runs out of pizza seasoning. In total, half of Turkey's land is agricultural. The sector employs 15% of Turkey's workforce, makes up 10% of its exports, and 5% of its GDP. Historically, Turkey was one of the few places that was self-sufficient in food production, and this remains the case with so many crops like fruits, vegetables, and even sugar, but has become a net importer of important staples like wheat in recent years. Russia and Ukraine are vital suppliers of that, which is one of the reasons why Turkey brokered a grain deal between them. But relying on Russia for food is like asking a toddler to hold your ice cream. You know how it's going to end. And for Turkey, it's not a good idea. Moscow and Ankara might do business today, but their history is mostly centuries of clashes, with Russia usually gaining the upper hand. Yet, Turkey's geography should, in theory, guarantee food security. Its southeastern territory has the benefit of being in the Fertile Crescent, which is basically humanity's breadbasket. In the 1970s, Ankara launched the Southeastern Anatolia Development Project. It was a massive plan for 22 dams and 19 hydro plants that would electrify cities and almost double farmland. Think the Hoover Dam, but cranked up to 11. But politics, disputes, and delays turned the grand vision into a half-finished project. 50 years later, it's still more of a promise than a reality. But there are backups in place. You might have guessed that by now, though. Aside from a strong agricultural base, Turkey's geography has another blessing. It has a coastline that's almost 5,200 miles, 8,400 kilometers long. And it's not just any old coastline. It gives Turkey two more cards to play. The first one is pretty simple. A country with a lot of coastline means a lot of access to fish. Turkey's fishing industry isn't among the world's leaders. In 2022, it was the world's 31st most valuable fishery, with a total of almost 8.5 million tons in production value. That's far behind the world leader China, which produced 88.6 million tons that year. Even North Korea produced about 40,000 more tons than Turkey. But it's not just about the size, it's what you do with it. In 2023, Turkey exported $428 million worth of fish. It imported only $23 million. Compare that with China, which is a net importer of fish despite being the world's leading exporter. So if Turkey needed to, it could rely on its coastline for additional food security. But fish are just a side quest. Some stretches of coastline are good for working on your tan. But Turkey's? Controlling the Bosporus and the Dardanelles is like being the bouncer at the world's busiest club. Nobody gets in or out without their say-so. That's Turkey's hidden bonus against Russia, the kind of leverage that makes Vladimir Putin think twice before messing with its wheat supply. And the man who knows how to use that map advantage? Recep Tayyip Erdogan. He's Turkey's most influential leader since Ataturk. But where Ataturk turned west to build a liberal democracy, Erdogan flipped the script. Under him, Turkey has leaned into militarism, nationalism, and a fresh dose of imperial swagger. His decision to turn the Hagia Sophia back into a mosque was basically the sequel to the Ottoman Empire, and like most sequels, it's louder, flashier, and comes with a bigger budget. Erdogan is controversial, but he's also a master at weaponizing Turkey's geography. Mountains as walls, seas as highways, straits as choke points. It's the same tools empires have leaned on for 2,000 years. The difference is, he's playing with drones, pipelines, and forward bases. To many, modern Turkey already looks like a neo-empire, extending its reach into places few expected. But as much as Erdogan would love to claim all the credit, he can't. Anatolia has been the beating heart of empires for centuries. And in 2022, geography gave him the perfect chance to prove it. On February 27th, 3 days into Putin's war, Turkey blew the dust off a 1936 treaty and slammed the Black Sea door in his face. There were no reinforcements, no backup fleet, just sea drones circling and an ego taking on water. This provision limits the passage of naval ships of belligerent powers into the Black Sea during wartime, except those returning to their officially registered bases. The decree meant that Russia couldn't enforce its Black Sea fleet, and the Ukrainians sure did appreciate the gesture when they went on to decimate it with their sea drones. Turkey's strategic power comes from controlling the Dardanelles and the Bosporus, the only gateways between the Mediterranean and the Black Sea. The Bosporus is basically the world's oil faucet, and Turkey's hand is always on the handle. These waterways have been among the world's most important passages since ancient times. Today, around 48,000 ships pass through the Bosporus alone every year, carrying 3 million barrels of oil and 20 million tons per year of petroleum products. And that includes 38% of Russia's crude oil exports. If Erdogan wanted to, he could cripple the Russian economy simply by controlling the land around these straits. Putin knows this, which is why he's tried to play nice, even after Erdogan humiliated Russia's Black Sea fleet and demanded that Crimea be returned to Ukraine. For Russia, it's safer to sell him oil at a good price, and Erdogan is more than happy to take the deal, playing both sides of the conflict to his advantage. And that's the perk of owning the straits. Any economy relying on this route plays by Turkey's rules. The only way to break that grip would be to push Turkey out. And let's be honest, that's easier said than done. Just ask Constantine the Great. In the 4th century, he set up shop here for his shiny new Christian capital and, in a bold display of humility, named it after himself. That city, Constantinople, held out for over 1,000 years, until giant gunpowder cannons finally blasted it down. Fast forward 5 centuries, and the French and British tried their luck at Gallipoli. And guess what? It ended just as badly. The straits are so defensible, they're practically a cheat code for geopolitical invincibility. And the straits aren't the only power-up. Zoom out on the map, and Turkey is basically a giant fortress. Just look at it on a map. High ground, rugged terrain, 3 seas at its doorstep. How do you even begin to crack that? Historically, the best bet was to hit Anatolia from the sea, but the ocean is the least reliable teammate in history. One minute it's carrying you forward, the next it's rage-quitting mid-match. You never know when the waves will turn on you. Take the Aegean, for example. Today it's Turkey's backyard, but in the ancient world it was a constant threat. If the Trojan War really went down, it was only possible because the Greeks owned the sea lanes. That naval edge let them lean on the Hittites and chip away at their control of western Anatolia. Back then, the sea was a nightmare for Anatolian empires. And thousands of years later, the same waters are still causing trouble. Only now, the fight isn't over Helen of Troy, it's over oil and gas. The Aegean and Eastern Mediterranean have a lot of untapped energy reserves. So in 2020, Turkey sent an exploration ship to look for oil and natural gas close to its southern shore. There was just one problem. These waters lay near the Greek island of Costellorizzo, which Athens claimed as its territory with an exclusive economic zone stretching 200 nautical miles from its coast. That's consistent with international maritime law, but the Turks were naturally upset. The island is only 1.2 miles, 2 kilometers off their coast. The Turkish and Greek navies faced off for weeks, with Athens well aware of Ankara's intentions. The year before, Turkey had sent seismic research ships into contested waters. There are valuable resources in the Eastern Mediterranean, and Erdogan is keen to develop them for himself. So the Greeks kept a tight watch. The climactic moment came when a Greek and Turkish frigate collided. France, Israel, and Egypt now intervened, expressing their concern for Greece, and Turkey had to back down. But that foreign support is a clue about how much the balance of power is changing in the region. Countries tend to form coalitions when they fear the growing power of another country. That's the case in the Eastern Mediterranean. The sea that was once a danger is increasingly becoming modern Turkey's friend, thanks to an ambitious military buildup. Years ago, Turkey decided it was better to run the sea than get swamped by it. And the payoff is clear, just look at the numbers. Turkey started 2025 with 90 total ships in play, including a helicopter carrier, 13 subs, 17 frigates, and even 5 amphibious assault ships. The average age is just 22 years. In fleet terms, that's still middle-aged, not a retirement home. Meanwhile, Greece has a respectable 65 total ships in their fleet. It's respectable, sure, with 10 subs and 13 frigates, but their average hull age is nearly 32. That's like stepping into the ring with a boxer in their prime while you're already the guy telling stories about your glory days. And those stories mostly involve getting punched in the head. Up in the skies, Turkey soars ahead. Turkey fields nearly 1,100 aircraft to Greece's 558. Only the fighters come close, 201 to 178. But everywhere else, from transports to trainers, tankers, and helicopters, Turkey dominates. Then there are the drones, Turkey's real game changer. You've probably seen the Bayraktar TB2 in the news from Ukraine, but that's just the headline act. Turkey fields over 150 drones, scouts, bombers, kamikazes, you name it, they've got it. The new TB3 can even launch from assault ships, basically turning them into discount store aircraft carriers. And coming up next is Turkey's own 5th-generation fighter, the TAI-TF Khan. It's bid to play in the same league as the F-35. Turkey hasn't cashed in on Eastern Mediterranean resources yet, but with a navy this strong, squeezing Ankara at sea is no easy job. That's why Greece leans on foreign backing. Without it, the scales keep tipping Turkey's way. And there's something else that this fortress country has going for it. Let's say you're building a navy. Sea power works best when it's backed by strong geography on land. The United States is the modern standard bearer for sea power. Flanked by 2 oceans that separate it from potential rivals, it can afford to build a navy that projects force far from home. Sea power also works best when it's concentrated. China hopes that its navy will one day exceed the United States, not in absolute power, but in its neighborhood. America has global commitments, and China can concentrate all of its sea power on the region that's key to its objectives. For the Turks, geography provides the opportunity to do both of these things. North of the Bosporus is the Black Sea. Turkey has 991 miles, nearly 1,600 kilometers of coastline there, but it's always been a tough region. This maritime crossroads has been the subject of competition between great powers since ancient times. Turkey has had a long historical rival with Russia for the Black Sea in the modern world, and in the Cold War, the place was practically a Soviet lake. Even so, the potential for military action against the Anatolian heartland through this route was and is practically impossible. Turkey's Black Sea coast has a narrow strip of corn-growing land, cut off from the interior by the formidable Pontic Mountains. Stretching about 620 miles, 1,000 kilometers from the Georgian border to the Sea of Marmara, this range forms a natural wall along the shore. The average elevation here is around 9,200 feet, 2,800 meters, with Mount Kachkar being the highest peak at an elevation of just over 12,900 feet, nearly 4,000 meters. These mountains are cloaked in dense forests, broadleaf near the coast, conifers higher up. It's sorta neat. Turkey gets the defense provided by the mountains and the forests while reaping the agricultural benefits of the area, like those hazelnuts we talked about. Great news for any Nutella lovers out there. This region is also a hotspot for making that tea you drink in the morning. What about the opposite side of the Anatolian Peninsula? There's a narrow coastal strip here, too. This place isn't that good for agriculture, though. Soil erosion is a real problem. But hey, it's got a beach. The city of Antalya brings in a lot of tourist revenue because of its fantastic shore and ancient ruins. Then there's the port of Mersin, linked to the Cilician Gates, a crucial doorway through the Taurus Mountains, the southern wall of this fortress country. The mountains run parallel to the Mediterranean with a length of 932 miles, 1,500 kilometers, that go from the Aegean coastal plain to the east. There, they connect with the Armenian highlands, and if you thought their cousins to the north were tall, you haven't seen anything yet. The Taurus Mountains have an average elevation of 10,400 feet, about 3,200 meters. The highest peak is Mount Demirkazak, in the central part of the range with an elevation of around 12,300 feet, 3,700 meters. So Turkey's southern reaches are pretty hard to make a move on, and that helps in a volatile region. But just to be sure, Ankara has taken one more controversial step to secure its southern flank, involving itself in one of the longest-running disputes in international affairs. A 2-hour ferry ride from southeastern Turkey takes you to Cyprus, a storied island, 68 miles, 109 kilometers offshore. It's a key pivot point in the eastern Mediterranean, and when the British Empire finally gave it up in 1960, Turkey wasn't about to let it slip from its sphere of influence. But decolonization is rarely straightforward. Cyprus had 2 distinct communities meant to share power after the British left, an arrangement that collapsed in just 3 years. A tax disagreement saw the breakdown of the government and a violent power struggle that left the Greek Cypriot majority in complete control of the island. The Turkish Cypriots were isolated and Ankara was watching. Under Britain's withdrawal terms, London, Athens, and Ankara were all tasked with guaranteeing order and sovereignty on Cyprus. But when Greece's ruling military junta overthrew the island's legitimate government in 1974, Turkey claimed the Greeks had violated that agreement. The Turkish armed forces invaded Cyprus and established the Turkish Republic of Northern Cyprus, a state recognized only by Turkey. The island has remained divided ever since. Ankara frames its presence as protecting Turkish minorities, but the reality is that holding this territory serves its strategic interests as well. Because of the mountains and its control of northern Cyprus, Turkey's Black Sea and Mediterranean shores are well protected from potential enemies. That means Ankara can concentrate most of its sea power on dealing with troubles in the Aegean, or if the need arises, to balance against Russia in the Black Sea. Hey, Turkey and Greece are still both part of NATO after all. Nothing like a common enemy to bring 2 former enemies together, right? Back in the eastern Mediterranean, Cyprus is more than a line of defense. It's a launch point for projecting power deeper into the sea, keeping rivals off balance while Turkey safeguards its shores and trade. Turkey underscored the island's importance when it landed a Bayraktar TB2 drone at Gecikale Air Base in northern Cyprus. No traditional combat aircraft have been there since 2000, but Turkey wants to protect its energy exploration ships. And since it's a drone power, any Bayraktars here can do that for a much cheaper price and less controversy. But Turkey's reach into the eastern Mediterranean through Cyprus probably won't stop at Gecikale. Erdogan has toyed with the idea of building a permanent naval base in northern Cyprus since 2019. The plans have been off and on since then, but in July of 2024, Erdogan said that Turkey was ready to build a base there, quote, if necessary. It was a threat to the Greeks, who have talked about building their own base in southern Cyprus. As far as he's concerned, it's always good to have options. And when it comes to defense, there are still a couple of more blessings geography has given to Anatolia. For Anatolian empires, dangers have always been present in the east. The Hittites needed to deal with the Mitanni and the Assyrians. The Eastern Roman Empire had to deal with the Persians, and so did the Ottomans. Fortunately for the Turks and their predecessors, Eastern Anatolia is fabulously good for defense. To find out why, look at a curious local legend. This is Mount Ararat in extreme northeastern Turkey. It's the highest peak in the land with an elevation of over 16,800 feet, over 5,100 meters. One tradition claims this mountain is where Noah's Ark came to rest after the Great Flood. That tradition is wrong, but the fact it's wrong matters when we talk about Turkey's OP geography. The biblical account says that Noah's Ark didn't come to a rest at the Mount Ararat, but the mountains of Ararat. It was an ancient way to talk about the region now called the Armenian Highlands. The Highlands are a huge place. They extend from the Black Sea in the north to the Iranian Plateau in the south, over 238,000 square miles, 616,000 square kilometers of territory. Just look at them on an elevation map, and you can see that they make for a nice eastern border for Turkey to have, especially when they butt up against one of the few countries that could potentially be a threat in the immediate area, Iran. Usually, it's a bad idea when two great powers share a border, but thanks to the Armenian Highlands, Turkey isn't in all that much danger from its Iranian neighbor. The concept's been proven before. In the late 18th and early 19th centuries, the Sunni Ottoman Turks and the Shiite Iranians fought each other over territory, trade disputes, and sectarian tensions. The Iranians had to cross treacherous mountain highlands, ideal terrain for strong fortifications. Their offensives were repelled, leaving the Ottomans secure in their heartland. Turkey and Iran have had some complicated relations ever since, but our tour of this natural fortress has one more stop before we look across its borders, a last line of defense for the northern frontier, though it wasn't always as strong as it is today. The Caucasus Mountains stretch for 750 miles over 1,200 kilometers, spanning from the Black to the Caspian Seas. They cover an area of around 184,000 square miles, over 476,000 square kilometers in total. The average elevation is nearly 7,200 feet, almost 2,200 meters. The highest mountain is Mount Elbrus. At almost 18,500 feet, over 5,600 meters, it's the tallest peak in Europe. This mountain isn't in Turkey, though. It lies in Russia's Kabardino-Balkarian Republic, but the high mountain suits Ankara just fine. The Caucasus act as a natural buffer from Russia, and that's important since Moscow has tried to invade Turkey through this route before. Turkey lost its eastern city of Kars to the Russians in the Russo-Turkish War of 1877-78, but it regained it after World War I. That's the value of a mountainous buffer zone. Invasions are far less likely to push deep enough for major territorial demands. Today, that Caucasus buffer has grown, and with it, the balance of power continues to shift. Russia quickly crushed attempts at independence in Armenia, Georgia, and Azerbaijan, bringing them into the Soviet Union. During World War II, neutral Turkey watched Nazi Germany invade the North Caucasus, grateful for the distance, but mindful it still bordered its old enemy. So, Turkey joined NATO in 1952, adding an extra layer of defense. Time has been kind to Turkey. Moscow's hold on most of the Caucasus collapsed almost overnight with the fall of the Soviet Union, leaving 4 independent states in the mountains. Now, Georgia serves as a buffer to the north, while Russia clings only to the northern Caucasus, resorting to puppet regimes inside Georgian territory to claw back influence in the region. But there's another Caucasus state, Azerbaijan, and that's even better news for Ankara, but more on that shortly. Before we get there, we need to do one more bit of comparison between Turkey and an old enemy. Our tour of Fortress Turkey shows how it's defended on 3 sides by the sea and multiple mountain ranges just beyond it. When it comes to being a great power, this is what separates Turkey from its historical rival Russia. For both Erdogan and Putin, offense is the best defense, but they start from very different positions. Putin invaded Ukraine in a bid to revive the Russian Empire and Soviet Union, driven by Russia's long, indefensible European borders. But Turkey's borders are well protected. Unlike Russia, Turkey's geography acts as a force multiplier. It allows Erdogan to extend his influence abroad in a much more cost-effective way. You see, the features on the map might be stable, but the borders on it are the opposite. Those change frequently, and the power of the nations behind them changes even faster. In the 21st century, Turkey enjoys relative strength, while its neighbors have grown weaker. The Greeks may be a thorn in Turkey's side, but in Asia, Ankara faces its best opportunity in centuries. Turkey is using its position to build an even broader geographical buffer in the region, one which should bring more wealth to Turkey's Anatolian heartland. First things first. The Ottoman-Iranian wars are long gone, but Turkey and Iran still share a border, and like neighbors who never quite get along, that makes things tense. Relations are calmer today, but when Syria's civil war erupted in 2011, the two had very different stakes. For Turkey, instability next door was a nightmare scenario. The war risked spilling over into some of its most fertile farmland, so Ankara was on high alert. The fears proved real. Millions of refugees poured across the border, but for Erdogan, the bigger worry wasn't refugees. It was the risk of an old ethnic fault line cracking open. That's one of Turkey's few built-in weaknesses, proof that even OP geography comes with a few bugs in the code. Anatolian Turks aren't the only ethnic group in Turkey. The CIA says they make up between 70 and 75% of the population. Kurds are the country's largest minority, making up 19% of the population. Relations between the two have been tense for 100 years. Things got really heated in 1984 when the Kurdistan Workers' Party, the PKK, began a full-scale insurgency. But the Kurds aren't limited to Turkey. Iran, Iraq, Syria, and Azerbaijan have all sizable Kurdish populations. When Syria's civil war broke out, Ankara felt it could inspire Kurdish separatists and undermine its territorial integrity. Intervention was the natural result, and it was a turning point in Turkey's modern foreign policy. At first, Syria looked like a lost cause. Iran and its ally Russia seemed to have secured Bashar al-Assad's rule, until he was toppled in just a few weeks between November and December of 2024. It was a stunning campaign, and Ankara was there to help it along. Syria's new president, Ahmed al-Shara, is much different than Assad. This February, Erdogan met with him and committed to supporting him in the fight against all kinds of terrorism. That's pretty much slang for the Kurds in northeastern Syria, which the Turkish government sees as having ties with the PKK. There's a bit of a contradiction to that idea, though. How can there still be ties when the PKK in question no longer exists? Around the time Bashar al-Assad was hightailing it to Moscow, Turkey scored another breakthrough, this time on the diplomatic front. A new round of peace talks with the PKK had begun, and by May 12th of 2025, the party voted to dissolve itself. But like any good bureaucracy, they left a convenient loophole. Turkey announced that it would continue to operate against any active remnants of PKK in the region, and it has the bases to do it. The end of the Assad regime didn't mean the end to Turkey's intervention in Syria. The Kurdish-led Syrian Democratic Forces report over 200 Turkish military installations in northern Syria, and the number is growing. Turkey is expanding its operations to include bases in Palmyra, Tifor, and Minna as part of a deal with the new Syrian government. Supposedly, they're for training and as a bulwark against any potential ISIS return, but they can also conveniently operate air defense systems and drones. Look at them on a map, and you can see their importance for potential operations against the Kurds. Turkey got everything it wanted out of Syria, and the war was just one of the goings-on in the region that Ankara seized on. The Syrian civil war spilled into Iraq, where the large Kurdish population in the north posed fresh concerns for Turkey. So Ankara intervened there too. Turkey first went into Iraq in 1994, when it pursued PKK forces there. It's been near Mosul ever since, but more bases continue to come. In just the first 6 months of 2024, Turkey launched almost 1,100 attacks in Iraqi territory and built a string of new bases northeast of Batifa. Official statements say Turkey has punched into Iraqi territory between 6 and 25 miles, 10 to 40 kilometers, depending on which part of the border you take your tour around. And the bases? Turkey says it has 11. Iraqi MP Hussein al-Ameri, who serves on the Defense Committee, says there are at least 40. Jabba al-Yawar, a former minister in the Kurdistan regional government, says the number could be as high as 80. The PKK might be supposedly dissolving, but make no mistake, it's just a pretext. Turkey won't be leaving those bases anytime soon, especially because they aren't just good bastions against the Kurds. This is a map that began appearing on Turkish state media about a decade ago. You'll see Turkish borders extending well into Syria and Iraq. Aleppo, Mosul, Arbil, and Kirkuk are all in them. Around the same time these maps were published, Erdogan was criticizing the 1923 Treaty of Lausanne, which created Turkey's modern borders. He said it left the country too small, overlooking its historical holdings and ethnic Turks in the region. Turkey has ambitions in Iraq, but to understand their full scope, you have to look east to Azerbaijan. It helps to have the right friends to make the most of your geography. And for Turkey, Azerbaijan is a BFF with benefits. The Azerbaijanis are another Turkic ethnic group, which makes for smoother relations. Better still, the friendship extends Turkish influence to the Caspian Sea. There's just one stumbling block for Ankara: Armenia. It's wedged right between Turkey and Azerbaijan. Its internationally recognized territory can't simply be wiped off the map, but the breakaway region of Nagorno-Karabakh offered the perfect pretext to push Turkey's Caspian ambitions forward. This place was set up by the Soviet Union in 1923, but it wasn't its own distinct territory. Legally, it was inside the Azerbaijan Soviet Socialist Republic and governed as an autonomous oblast. Sounds complicated? It's about to get much worse. Nagorno-Karabakh was home to a 95% ethnically Armenian population, and in 1988, with the Soviet Union on its last legs, its local legislature declared its desire to join the Republic of Armenia. War broke out even before the Soviet Union collapsed. The fighting ended in 1994, with Armenia having the upper hand, and Turkey didn't like that. While Turkey's navy held a staring contest with the Greek fleet in the west, it faced far fewer obstacles to advancing its plans in the east. In late September 2020, the peace in Nagorno-Karabakh broke down, and Turkey didn't mind. It saw two big opportunities. The conflict was a convenient testing ground for some of its new drones, and they were an instant hit. Just not for the people they were aimed at. Armenia used to have the military upper hand against Azerbaijan, despite being outnumbered. Not anymore. Azerbaijan reclaimed almost all of the territory it lost in the First War. 3 years later, the ceasefire collapsed again. Azerbaijan took the rest of Nagorno-Karabakh, forcing almost the entire ethnically Armenian population to flee. Azerbaijan was accused of ethnic cleansing, but Erdogan supported the offensive, saying that Turkey and Azerbaijan were acting together under one nation, two states, to defend territorial integrity. In other words, Azerbaijan and Turkey are part of the same project, one that conveniently spans the Armenian highlands. The relationship with Baku ensures that Turkey's position in the east is practically impregnable. With its fortress heartland, Azerbaijan as a force multiplier, and a large string of bases just to provide an additional buffer, Turkey can move forward on its plans to further enrich itself. You've heard about China's Belt and Road Initiative. Turkey has its own version. It's called the Trans-Caspian International Transport Route. The aim is to connect Europe to China through Turkey, Azerbaijan, Georgia, and Kazakhstan. Conveniently, Turkey envisions itself playing the leading role, linking energy-hungry Europe to suppliers, while bypassing Russia and Iran. Yeah, you heard that right. Turkey gets to buy Russian energy on the cheap while selling Europe on other sources that flow through Turkey. But Turkey's ambitions haven't ended there. With a secure home base and backyard, Ankara is now extending its influence even further afield. In 2019, the base expanded with naval and air elements. The place is well armed with thousands of troops, aircraft, artillery, and special commando units. What are they protecting? Look at another map of the region. Qatar is that small finger-like tip on the Arabian Peninsula. It might lack size, but it's a rich place. It had the world's 10th highest GDP per capita at the start of 2025, with just under $73,000. It also has the world's third largest reserve of natural gas, with 871 trillion cubic meters of it. In terms of oil, it has a reserve of at least 25.24 billion barrels, ranking it 14th in the world. Where's all that energy going to? Well, if Erdogan has his way, it's heading to Turkey. Remember those bases in northern Iraq? They're good for more than one thing. They can secure the route with ease. So, in April 2024, Turkey signed a crucial agreement alongside Qatar, the United Arab Emirates, and Iraq. It was for a $17 billion rail project to connect Turkey to the Gulf states via Iraq's Grand Fa port on the Al Fa Peninsula. Just look at it on a map. If you're Vladimir Putin, you might be wondering how much longer Turkey will keep buying your energy and funding your war coffers. But there's nothing Putin can do about it. He's stuck with a country whose geography constantly puts it on the back foot. Anatolia's geography is more compact, far easier to defend, and provides it with the strategic security it needs to flex its muscles further afield. That's why this place has been at the heart of empires, from the Hittites in the Bronze Age to Erdogan's new kind of Ottoman revival today. Russia may have nukes and Turkey may not, but geography still decides the game. Imperial strongmen crave empires, and in that world, Russia is stuck fighting its own map. Turkey, meanwhile, sits behind its mountains and priceless straits, backed by a modern navy and fleets of killer drones. For over 2,000 years, Turkey's been playing with map cheats, and everyone else has been stuck on hard mode. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you want to see more videos like this, then please consider subscribing and turn on notifications. It really does make a difference. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time on MapPack.